There we go. Thank you very much. Great. So welcome along to the Teams Advanced Training. You've made it this far and you've managed to listen to me or Russell or Chris for this long, which is an achievement in itself. My name's Nick. I work with a company called Hable. We have been helping you to move to Teams and adopt Teams as a result of the kind of working from home situation that we have had. Lots of academic people have had interest in using Teams as a tool for teaching, and that's what these sessions have been about. This one will focus quite heavily on OneNote and a very small bit of the Teams stuff around that. I was a primary school teacher for 14 years and 7 of those a deputy head before working in teacher training. So I've worked in universities and beyond in primary schools as well. And I've also been a OneNote user since 2003 when it came out, and I absolutely love it. So this is my favorite session. So this session will help you to support students using Teams and Class Notebook. And I guess what it will also do is allow you to make a choice as to how much or how little you use Class Notebook, because it isn't for everyone. You know, you don't have to use Class Notebook. It's not a mandatory part of Teams. However, hopefully, part of my job is to persuade you that it might be something that you might want to use later on. Okay, so very simple agenda. Again, we'll talk about the guidance. I'm not going to show you the slides again. I think you've seen them twice, but I'll explain what the guidance is. We'll look at how to access OneNote in Teams, setting it up, structure it, populating it, and using the tools that are inside it. And if you have any questions, do shout along the way. And please do take part. You can be as silly as you like inside OneNote, so please do. And that is that. Let's not do these bits. I never like those things. So just a very quick recap of the QM guidance around this. Please do use Teams. You know, they would rather you use it for the kind of synchronous stuff and the stuff that other tools don't do. So use it for lectures, breakout rooms, small group teaching, whatever, working on documents, using it for informal file storage. But please do keep your more formal class stuff, the bulky stuff, for your lectures, for your content, for your courses. Please do keep that in QM+. If you create videos using Teams or PowerPoint or any of the tools that you've seen, please make sure that you link those as normal to QM+, and also use QM+ for assessments and things like that. That's not to say, however, that you shouldn't use Teams for experimenting with any of the things that is inside, as long as you stick to those rules. Good, that's that bit out of the way. I feel like one of those guys on the end of one of those radio adverts who talks very quickly. Right, so let me share my Teams screen with you, and this should be reasonably familiar to you by now. Okay, so we are here, and this is our normal Teams window outside of a call. We're not going to focus on any calling features today. And you are all hopefully part of a team called Astrophysics OneNote 1. And if I go in there, I can see, there we go, a few people have said hello, so thank you very much. And we all know how this works. I'm going to show you just 1 or 2 things inside Teams, which are a bit more advanced that I've left till today, and then we're going to go straight into Class Notebook, because we're going to run out of time otherwise. So in the previous sessions, we have all got good at tagging or mentioning by typing at team, whoops, or at person. Okay, and those, of course, are your 2 basic staples of getting people or getting your students to know that there is stuff going on in your team: at team, at person. But there's a bit more that we can do there. And a lot of people have been saying, well, I'm probably going to have a cohort of about 100 people in my team, which is great. But how do we then section those off? And they were saying, well, we're probably going to have, you know, 6 groups of 10 or 6 groups of 12 or whatever. How do we section those off? And there is a way to do that. Rather than blanket saying everyone in my astrophysics team needs to see this, what about if we just needed 10 people to see it? We can put those in a tag group. All right, and we do that by going to the 3 dots, managing tags, and I've already got one here called cohort 1. So I'm actually going to go and delete that because Evan's in that one. So I'm going to delete that one, or I'll tell you what, I'll just leave it where it is, because we'll go back and make another one. So if I wanted to create another tag, I'd give it a name. So I would call this, I don't know, group 2, and I would add Aggie, Simon, and we just keep going in there until we had the right people for our cohort. Okay, But then what happens is once I've created that, and these are per team, okay, so I could create another one called group 2 in another team, and that will be fine too. Once I've done that, rather than having to just single out Aggie or single out astrophysics, the whole team, I can say at group 2. Exactly what an astrophysics professor would say. Have you seen the space rockets? And that will be that only those people in group 2 got that message. All right, everybody else, of course, could see it, but they don't get notifications. All right, so I think that could be a really important function within your team. Okay, so that's kind of on the way to Class Notebook. So let's, without any further ado, let's go and have a look at Class Notebook. And in a minute, I'm going to rewind and show you how to create your Class Notebook, but I'm going to just start off by explaining what that is and letting it sink in for a second. So I'm just going to check chat because it looks like there might be a question. Karen, can we import people into groups? Not at the moment, Karen. You should be able to copy and paste from an Excel spreadsheet, but that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But at the moment, you can't import people into those groups. It would be nice if you could, but at the moment, they are just manual, unfortunately. All right. Okay, so the Class Notebook tab lives halfway across, and it only works in the general channel for your class type of team. You cannot get a Class Notebook in any other kind of team. You can get a OneNote Notebook, but that is a different beast entirely. Class Notebook is based on OneNote, but it does a lot more. All right, that's not to say that OneNote isn't brilliant as a personal organization tool working with several people, but Class Notebook is great for large classes and it organizes everything that you do in a really, really smart way. All right. And this is what it looks like. Now, there are, again, you've been through, most of you, apart from Aggie, the basic training, and you will have used files in the Files tab and collaborated on a Word document and seen how all of that works. You will also know that there is an online version of Word and a desktop version of Word, and that is the same with OneNote. All right. Although OneNote is a very different tool to what you've probably been used to in lots of other, office-based applications, it still works in that same way. That your OneNote is a file. It lives in Teams, and you can open it in the browser, which is this version, or you can open it on the desktop. All right. I would suggest that if you want to use this and you want to use it well, opening it on the desktop will be your best bet, but I will come back to that and I will show you both as we go through. But what is OneNote? What is OneNote Class Notebook? What can it do for you? Effectively, OneNote Class Notebook is a filofax. If you've ever had a filofax, I won't get you to admit to it, but it is very similar to a filofax. My wife still has one. And I say filofax rather than something like a lever arch file or some other kind of paper-based metaphor, because in a filofax, and certainly in my wife's anyway, there's all kinds of stuff. It's not just bits of paper nicely organized. There's everything everywhere. There's, little fluffy key rings and bank cards, bits of scribbled notes on paper, coins, all kinds of things, as well as organized notes and things like that. And OneNote is very much like that because OneNote is extremely good for being creative and not having to organize yourself in a linear fashion. So it's starting to move away from the likes of things like Word, where you start at the top and you finish at the bottom. OneNote also has sections and pages. And if I open up some of these things here, I'll go through all of these in a sec. You can see, well, it already starts to look a bit more like a filofax. We have these little colored sections that stick out the side. Well, my filofax is one of those, as do my lever arch files. Sections and pages are the backbone of OneNote, all right, whether that's Class Notebook or not. Okay. Class Notebook differs from the normal version of OneNote, though, because it adds structure. Okay, it gives you a structure for teaching. All right, it's absolutely focused on working with students. There's nothing else that this does. It can't be bent to use in any other way. It works only for educators. All right, it's not part of any other version of Office 365 anywhere else in the world. It is just for educators. When you create one, and I will show you how to create one in a second, you get these are called section groups, these kind of gray groups of tags outside here. You get a section group called collaboration space. Okay, and I've got some sections in there already. One of them has a task in, so if you are feeling brave, draw me a picture, add some text in there, do something. That would be great for me to see. while I'm talking if you want to, or we'll give you a bit of time in a minute to have a go at that, but put whatever you like on there, just play with this page. This is a free-for-all. So your collaboration space is very much a canvas that you can work on together in groups. Okay, so you get your students in here and you say, right, this is for cohort 1, this is for cohort 2, and this is where we're going to work. It's like giving your students a big piece of paper and saying, right, go off and have a go with that. All right, that works nicely. Okay, so if you'd like to have a go at my little task, then please do. Otherwise, I will create some stuff in there myself in a minute. So that collaboration space open to all your students. Okay, real-time collaboration on these pages. And again, this page is a canvas. It stretches and spreads wherever you want it to go, unlike starting at the top and the bottom. When you add content, it appears in a box. Okay, your content appears in a box that then can be moved anywhere around that page. So you're not limited to putting stuff anywhere you like. It can go anywhere, absolutely anywhere. Wherever you click can go pictures, videos, any kind of content at all. And we'll go for that a little bit later. Okay, so it's a canvas, it's non-linear, and the collaboration space is for all your students to work together at the same time. The other thing is the content library. Now, this is very similar to the sort of teacher-only files area in the Files tab. Okay, and it's the kind of sort of equivalent of that, but in OneNote. Okay, it has again sections, but these sections are not editable by your students. Okay, so you can put things here, and I've got loads of stuff. I've got articles. Here's an article that I've printed about the Ariane rocket launch, and I literally printed that from the European Space Agency's website this morning as an article. It looks like it's been literally stuck in there on paper. And that's exactly what's happened, really. Okay, so you can print directly from your print button to OneNote. Okay. I can also add images, things like that, video content, and I'll go through all of this here. It's a YouTube video which plays directly in that page. Your students don't have to go to YouTube. And I could also maybe have an area for assignments. I've got an essay in there that I'd like you to complete later on. And all of this is available to my students, but they can't do anything apart from look at it or make their own copy. Okay, so I could say, maybe I've got a section in there for lecture whiteboards. And in my lecture boards, I've made a load of notes across this page, worked, on loads of stuff that I've talked about. And I could say to my students, right, well, that board from the lecture today, why don't you grab yourself a copy of that? Because then you can use that for a revision, or you can make your own notes on it, or you can do whatever. All right. That's quite powerful. Okay. They can then take their own copies. But as you'll see later, there are ways of automating that very simply. So that's content library. Students can view and copy content. Teacher has absolute control. Okay. The teacher only section down here, I've put a folder in there called My Planning. The teachers in this team have absolute rights to this. The students can't see it. So if you're in as you at the moment looking at this, you won't see this teacher only section. It just won't appear to you. All right. And underneath are the names of all of my students. You can see yourselves all down there. And inside your section, again, you don't see each other's. I see all of yours. You just see yours. We've got some stuff in here. I've got a section for homework. I've got a section for handouts. I've put module 2 in there. I've got class notes, and I control that as the teacher. You might not want a section for homework. You might want to rename that, and you might want it to be something else. So I can easily call that something else. All right, so it's very simple. Okay, and that is how Class Notebook is set up. All right, there is no other way of doing it than that. Okay, but let me show you how that gets set up, and it's an incredibly simple process. So let me go back to the beginning and say, right, I'm creating my class team. I'm going to create a team over here. By now, this should be reasonably familiar to you. It has to be a class team if I want a class notebook. I'm going to call it test OneNote team. Press next. Create my team in the normal way. Okay, it just has to be a class team. Add my students, don't add my students, whatever. Ignore all this. We're going to go straight to class notebook. And on that page, it says, okay, we're going to set this up. How do we make that work? So you press setup and you get two options, blank or from existing. I would ignore from existing the script, the bit of technology which copies from existing notebooks is useless. I would much prefer to copy this manually. So even if I have a notebook that I want to make the same, I would copy it manually, and it's not too difficult to do at the moment. That may change in the future. So choose blank notebook, and this is okay. This is what you're going to get in your notebook: collaboration space, content library, teacher only, and student. We've talked about those, so that's great. And how do you want to customize your student sections? Well, probably don't need homework because we're university. I don't know. Maybe not quizzes. Definitely handouts, and I could call those, instead of class notes, I could call those lecture notes, and maybe a section for assignments. And we'll create that. We can always distribute more later. And off it goes, and it builds your class notebook. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat just in case anyone has plonked something in there. It looks like there is. Yep, great, Simon. So OneNote then goes off and builds that. And the last thing I'm going to show you before we go back to our notebook that hopefully you're in already is this is a blank notebook. It's got all of your students in. As soon as they join or leave, their sections get updated. It's worth mentioning if you leave a student, if you delete a student from your team, then their section will not get deleted. You can delete it yourself as the teacher, but often if you've got a student moving somewhere else, they might want their content, so it will stay there just unused, and you can choose whether to delete that or not. Okay. But what I do, I particularly don't like this welcome to class notebook section because A, this is rather basic information, and B, it's out of date. It's from an old version of OneNote, and I don't know why they don't just get rid of it or change it. But I just go through, and the first thing I do is delete. Go into the collaboration space, delete the section that's in there. Go into the content library, delete the content that's in there, and just have a nice kind of blank canvas, if you like, ready to work on. All right. Now, if you really want the instructions, they're there, but actually they're not great. All right. So I go and delete those example sections straight away. Okay. But let's get rid of this team because we don't need this anymore. That's how you set up your class notebook. And we'll delete that team, and we'll go back to our astrophysics OneNote team. Okay. And here we go. So if I go into my collaboration space, I've got my group tasks here. We can work together here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my desktop app. So I'm going to use this outside of Teams. Okay. Teams for OneNote provides the structure, it provides the management of your class notebook, and it also provides a simple way to use class notebook. This is the web version of OneNote squeezed inside Teams. But for me, I think it's too small. You know, I've told you this page is a canvas, and yet if you have the sections open over here, your canvas is very small. So I prefer to have OneNote actually living on my computer, on my PC, on my Mac, and there's a great phone app for iPhone and Android. If you've got an iPad Pro, there's a good app for the iPad because you can use your pencil on there. It all works really, really nicely. Okay, so all of those things make it better to use the app, whether that's on your desktop PC or your mobile device. So I would say use the app. All right, and to do that, you drop it down from open in browser and you open it in the app. Okay, now bless them, Microsoft, I have no idea why they do this, but we just need to talk about why they have done a certain few things. When you first click this button, it will say which version of OneNote would you like to open it in, and of course for people who just want to open OneNote, that's a confusing question. The version of OneNote that you should probably use is the Windows 10 version if you're a Windows user. If you're not, I'll talk about the Mac version in just a second. You've only got one choice. On Windows, though, there is an old version of OneNote that will be installed with Office called OneNote 2016 or maybe OneNote 2019. They are the same. They are both getting on a bit. It was to be scrapped, and it is now being scrapped in 2021, but for some reason it was granted this kind of stay of execution, and I don't want to talk about it, but if you can help it, don't use OneNote 2016, use the Windows 10 app, which is the one that I'm going to show you, and the most modern and the one that gets the most updates. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, it'll give you those choices, and it will remember that choice from there on in. And what this does then, it just synchronizes this with your PC. Anything you do on your PC is synchronized here and vice versa. So your students can work wherever they want. And if you need to, you could work in here. It's not the most terrible place to work, and you can also make it bigger. It can fill the screen like that, even in Teams, but you still have this kind of edge and it takes up a lot of space. So I prefer to open it in my browser. So I am just going to stop sharing this bit of my screen and open the OneNote that I made earlier. And you'll see that it looks the same. There we go. That's my OneNote notebook. And you can see there's the bit that I wrote. It's got my initials next to it. So OneNote does show you who wrote what and why. And it's the same, except it uses the whole of my screen. It looks nicer and it has more features. Okay, we'll look at as many of the features as we can in the next little while, as well as the class notebook features and those kinds of things as well. Okay, so just bear in mind to start with, of course, if your students are in more than one subject, they can have more than one notebook on their bookshelf. So this little section at the top here is called the bookshelf. They can drop that down, and this is where they switch notebooks. So they can have as many notebooks as they like. All right, I'm just going to check. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Amber. I would do the basic because the basic one gives you that background into Teams. All right, they're kind of designed to be in that order, but yeah, no worries. Okay, so collaboration space, content library, still, teacher only, and all of my students here. Now, I've noticed that all of my students aren't here, so I need to synchronize this again. I need to force it to go off and check. Light bulb, synchronize this notebook. It'll do it every few minutes anyway, but it's just better to make it go off and do those things. All right, and you can start seeing, here we go, there's all you guys who've joined. Okay, and this is it. So what else what can we do with Class Notebook effectively? So let's have a look here. I've got in my content library, I've got my article here, and I literally went off to the internet and I printed this article from Chrome. All right, you can see it looks like a piece of paper. You know, that's exactly how my printer would see it. And it's got the text there. I can't edit that text because it's printed on the page, but this is a great way of giving your students the stuff that you would otherwise give them on paper. You know, standing at the door of the classroom, here you go, have a look at this. This is a great way of doing that. And it could even go into a special section in their area where they could take, you know, a copy of it or whatever. All right. So it's a really easy way to grab content from anywhere at all. Anything at all can be added into a OneNote page. All right, and I've got a little tool here to show you how to print to OneNote, but let's go and have a look at what else it can do. If we go to insert over at the top here, I said it was like a file of facts because any kind of media can be added to your OneNote notebook. Table, so you can add tabular data. All right, and we have, you know, the normal kind of table tool here, really easy. But also I can add files. So OneNote can become, to some extent, a file repository. There you go, it's a PDF about the Big Bang. We'll insert that as an attachment. There we go. That PDF becomes part of my OneNote. It's almost like stapling another document onto the side of a bit of paper. All right, we're literally stapling this or gluing this into that page. All right, if I double click on that, that would open up in whatever PDF editor I've got or reader on my PC. But more than that, we could say, well, actually, what I want to do is print that PDF onto the page so my students can then annotate it. It's good for revision. So grab a printout. Where's that PDF? There we go. And you still get the PDF file, but then it also goes off. It reads that PDF or that PowerPoint or that Word document or that Excel spreadsheet and prints it onto the page as an image effectively. This PDF was obviously a PowerPoint at one point, but that's all for the good, really. And you know, then my students could take a copy of this and they could make their notes next to it. You know, we could go to view, we could zoom out a bit. There we go. And I could start making notes. Either with a stylus or with text. And I can even then write over the top of the slide, just as I would on paper. Let me see if this is going to work. My computer has been a bit slow today with inking. I've got a computer with ink support, but it seems to be really slow. Yeah, I don't know why it's not. Yeah, that should be That's awful. Really, that's terrible. So it does have ink support. It's not OneNote. It is my computer, I'm afraid. I don't know why that is. It sometimes does it. It's a Lenovo thing. I think I've had 2 machines like this that do this. But I can make handwritten notes with a stylus, and I can even then turn those into text if I wanted to, by going to the draw menu and then ink to text. If I selected that bit of text, I don't suppose it's going to make much of that. Well, had a go, didn't it? So make notes, zoom in, zoom out, go back to 100% view. That's my printed page. But I can also grab things like pictures from a file. Well, I can grab a picture from a file I've got. There we go. It's a picture from where I was staying on holiday. We can then annotate that. That could be a picture of a nice space rocket or something like that. A little tip for your students is if they right click on the picture and choose set as background, they can then write over the top of the picture. Because it becomes part of the background. If you don't do that, you need to put your notes next to it. All right, so it's not the end of the world. All right, but that's a little tip. Right click, set as background, and it's just in that menu there. Okay. Other pictures I can insert if I've got a camera on my device. And don't forget, get the OneNote app on your phone, because if you take a picture on that camera and it's linked to this notebook, that image will appear on here within a few seconds. Great if you are ever at a conference again. I use just take pictures of slides that I'm interested in, or things from around the room, and they go into my OneNote. All right, very much like a scrapbook. So from a camera, it has a built-in camera app. Now it can't access my camera because I'm using it for Teams, but if it could, then it could use that app. And it also can search pictures online. Now it's a really simple search engine, unfortunately powered by Bing, but Tintin Space Rocket should be easy to find, and we just tap that and it'll stick itself on the page. There we go. I can see it's just about to arrive. The good thing about that, of course, is that it should be fine. There we go. The good thing about that, of course, is I don't have to go off to the internet and find it. I can grab it from here, and it is a Creative Commons license, so you don't have any licensing issues. All right. So all that really easy. Online video. If I go to video content here, I've got a section in my notebook here that I've made by pressing add section, and I've got a space shuttle video. Turn my sound on. That will play directly through OneNote. I don't need to go to YouTube. So maybe I've got a load of videos that I want my students to be able to see, and I want them to be able to kind of make notes around them or use them for revision or use them for whatever. This is the good way to do it. This is a really good way to do that, because it allows them a bit of creativity around the outside. It's not just sending them with a link to YouTube, it's allowing them to have that video and make notes at different points or whatever. All right, so that's a really, really good tool. Online video, a huge amount of online video supported, including all the major ones, Vimeo, YouTube, Stream, loads of other stuff as well, including now things like Flipgrid for video. All of that can be embedded into OneNote. And this is very much like sort of getting a pair of scissors and cutting a hole in your OneNote page and sticking something to sort of shine through the other side. So it's a really easy thing to do. All right. Normal links, I could grab a web link. So I've got a link from space.com. I just drag the link, plonk it into OneNote. Yeah, insert as an attachment. There we go. And that then would take me back to the space.com website. Really easy, appears as an attachment. I can then just move that around the page and organize this page for my students, perhaps. All right. Audio is my favorite feature, and you'll have to bear with me because it really is my favorite feature. So I've got an essay here, and maybe this was Aggie's essay from the first unit that we've done on astrophysics, and she's written me a nice essay here. It's quite long. Oops, I've already highlighted some of it. Let me just unhighlight that just so that it goes back to normal. So this is Aggie's essay, and she has written this for me, and I want to give her some feedback. Of course, I could start down here and I could add some text and I could write some stuff on it and all the rest of it, but I can also leave audio feedback. And I can leave audio feedback very easily. And I can, if I press audio there, let me just do that on a separate page. If I turn on the audio feedback, it just records what I'm saying. And the student can then play that back, and that's fine. Brilliant. Really good little tool to have. Puts the audio recording on the page. Stop it, play it. The audio feedback, it just records what I'm saying. There we go. Except if we go back to Aggie's essay here, what I can do is if I start recording here, yes, I'll still get the audio file on the page, so Aggie can go back and listen to that in its entirety, but it's quite a long essay. You know, it's good, 1,000 words or so. How do I tell Aggie the points that I've given the feedback? And I can do that very easily. So I start recording, and I can say, thanks very much, Aggie, for your essay. I'm just going to go through it, and I'm going to give you some feedback in line. So I could go through and I could say, well, just here, Aggie, I'm not sure that you've really understood what I've been talking about. I'm just going to highlight this bit for a bit of feedback. However, if I go down here, this paragraph here, I really liked. I thought that was really good. However, could you develop that a bit more? You get the idea. When I stop that recording, yes, I have the recording over here ready to play. But I also, if I hover over, he says, oh, that hasn't worked. That's a shame. That sort of has worked. Yeah, interesting. Okay. If I hover where I have recorded, it gives me a little play button in the margin, which will play at exactly the point that I highlighted Aggie's work. Just here, Aggie, I'm not sure that you've really understood what I've been talking about. I'm just going to highlight this bit for a bit of feedback. Sorry. However, if I go down here, this paragraph here, yeah, so I highlighted that and it accidentally stayed highlighted. But what it should have done was, it did that quite happily. That little play button should have been absolutely next to that yellow highlight, although I'd highlighted the other bit wrongly. And it literally puts a little play button next to where I have given that feedback so that Aggie could go through. Oh, he's highlighted it there, the little play button. I'll listen to that specific feedback from that specific point in my essay. Let me just see if it works again here, so I can give direct feedback about this bit here, Aggie, this bit here. There we go. And just highlight that bit and let's see if that works better. Interesting. So it worked there, yeah. Anyway, that should work. It worked really well in the last session. Of course, that's the one that's not being recorded. But yes, so it will put a tiny play button next to that. That's my favourite feature. I use this with 8-year-olds actually when I used to teach primary level, and they loved it because they could just go through, and it might have been a picture that they'd drawn or a photograph that they'd taken of something, or a photograph of their book. We used to take photographs of their work and it could go into here, and that was the evidence that we had. They loved it because I could highlight a bit with my pen or with my mouse and they would get individual feedback at that point. So it's a really, really powerful tool. Okay. There's loads of little features like that we keep coming across. If you're a mathematician, it will understand equations. If you write them with a pen, it will do maths operations and things like that. And there are, of course, stickers. So I could give Aggie's work, a lovely sticker. We've got some lovely astrophysics-based stickers here. Let's pop that there. There we go. Pop that next to her work. There we go. Who doesn't like a sticker? Really, really simple to use. And I can also add in forms. If I want to embed a Microsoft form into here, I can embed that and Aggie could then fill that in and I would get the data from that. So it's kind of this place where we collect ideas and information and things that we want to share with our students together in one place. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I realise that I've been talking a lot. Anything that you want to ask or anything that's not clear yet? Nope. Okay. Fine. So those are all the things that we can put into our work. Of course, we can draw. Now, I'm not going to show you that unless I might use my finger rather than the pen. I should be able to use the pen, which came at great expense with my lovely Lenovo PC. Let me just draw with my finger. Yeah, still not happy. It's the computer, not the ink signal, but that should, looks very strange, that should have quite happily drawn on the page, and you've got highlighters, you've got all kinds of stuff there. So if you do have an iPad Pro or a machine with a stylus, then this is a great tool. And I use this a huge amount. Whenever I go to a meeting, I sit this on my lap, turned inside out, and make it, do more work. Karen, that's a good question. More information about forms. We haven't done anything specific in any of the courses about forms, actually. They are a great tool for teaching because you get self-marking quizzes and all kinds of stuff that you can put in there as well. Let me just think where you can get information. Education specific information. Let me find a link for you and I will stick it in the chat after this call, but they are relatively self-explanatory, but there's some really good stuff and they link to Teams and OneNote really quite nicely. So let me find some information about that and I'll post that in the team afterwards, or in the channel afterwards, sorry, in the chat afterwards. Right, third time. We also have shapes, lines, graphs, often really useful. Just a simple graph saves us a bit of time. 3D graph, there we go. All that stuff works really, really well. We've got a ruler if you want to use this for your whiteboard, as I did. That's move it around with my fingers, draw with a pen. So that's really good for live work, and you could share this with your students on a Teams call. This could be your whiteboard or your lecture board. And when you've put your lecture board, send that to your students. So right, there we go. That's today's lecture. That's all the notes I made. Now it's yours because you've got access to Class Notebook. Go and take it away. Do whatever you need to do with it. All right. So, incredibly versatile tool. We're working with, it's a college, so it's not a university specific example, but they are working with students of all levels. They have adopted Teams lock, stock and barrel. They've got rid of everything else they had because they need to save some money. And they use OneNote Class Notebook pretty much in place of every bit of paper that they have ever used. And they take photographs of their students' work or ask their students to take photographs of their work. They use this as a whiteboard tool. So they've got rid of all the whiteboarding tools that they buy or use, and they share this with their calls. They then share those whiteboards with their students who then can take a copy of them and use them themselves. So OneNote has become a real integral part of what they do. The university example, and I don't know this university and I wish I could go and talk to them, is the University of New South Wales. If you just search Teams and University of New South Wales, they are Microsoft's kind of worldwide showcase for Teams. And they use Teams in place of everything as well. They use OneNote for their, undergraduate and postgraduate students, and they ask them to use it in lectures and beyond for all of their assignments and things like that. So it's a really, really powerful tool for those people. And in fact, they have been instrumental in driving, New South Wales have been instrumental in driving the new features which are just about to land in OneNote. So what you will have is, if you're presenting live, you can have subtitles down the side. If you are, working within Teams, when you create a channel, it will create sections in the content library to match those channels for your students to work in. There's loads of features, including stability and speed improvements to make it look better. So there's loads and loads of features that are coming, and I'm just wondering if I can show you any of them now. There aren't many options, and I think I've got all of them turned on. Yeah, so they should all be there. Okay. Last couple of things. The view tools are really important because, of course, your pages are canvases. So, if I'm working on my essay here, I can choose how I view it, and I can zoom out if I want to make, notes around the side or add my next essay. And the good thing about this is, of course, you could add iteration. So maybe Aggie has responded to my feedback and she's just popped out that paragraph and done it again over here. So if I zoom in, she's gone back and she has reworked this paragraph here, and she sort of zoomed out and she's just popped it right next to it there, so that I can easily see that's the replacement paragraphs. And I can zoom out, and I could then, if I've got a touch screen, so I'm using my finger at the moment, I can zoom in on that. Again, audio feedback, highlight it, give feedback, whatever else, all of that just grows, and Aggie could do multiple versions of that all the way across the page. Or I could snap to 100%. Or I could say, well, fit the whole content on the screen. That's quite a nice tool. I can change the page color. I like yellow pages personally. You can change it to whatever you want. Tons of colors there. you know, whatever you like. I prefer a kind of light yellow color. It's just nice and easy on the eyes. But if I'm also using this live in a session, I've got lines. I prefer squares personally, sort of 5mm squares they look like to me. They just provide you with a structure. I can also see deleted notes. Things that have been got rid of, I can choose a history of deleted notes. All right. Translation tools built in. So I can say, well, actually, what about translating that to another language? Let's just highlight that and say translate selection. Yeah, got that. There we go. That's that from English to, well, let's translate it to, I know that Aggie speaks Polish, so let's translate that to Polish and copy that out and just paste it in there. And Aggie can tell us what kind of translation that turned out to be. You know, so all of that is just, yes, you can do it with Google Translate. You could go off to the web and do things, but actually it's here. It's built in. It uses the cloud to, you know, adjust that translation and make it work well. Many languages supported. All right. But I can also do other things. If I zoom out and just fit the content to the page, I can say, well, how did this page get built? You know, which bit came first? So that's quite nice if you've got a canvas, people starting all over the place. So how do I replay that? And I'll just say replay everything on my page. I said, okay, oh yeah, okay, pasted that in first. Yep, did that. And then that came over there. It's good for ink as well, so I can replay the ink. And it just gives me a brief history of that page. All right. Really, really powerful tools. Really simple. You know, they don't need much explanation. All right. Okay. That brings us to the last set of tools, and we're just about good for time, I think. All of these tools, these are more or less basic OneNote tools. You know, nothing I've shown you is particularly customized for education at the moment. But we have this class notebook menu here. This is the stuff that, you know, you'll need to work with your students, to give them content. And it looks like there's quite a lot of tools here. However, these 4 are now redundant. You do not need to use these to manage your class notebook. In fact, if you press them, it'll just take you back to Teams, because Teams does all of this for you. When you add and remove students, when you create your class notebook, like I showed you, adding teachers and managing your notebooks all happens through Teams. You don't need to use these tools at all, so ignore them. Hopefully they'll disappear. But that leaves us with 4 really useful ones. So, okay, I want to distribute a page to my students. This essay here, you know, this essay, maybe it's a task. Or I'll tell you what, I'm going to distribute this. What do we know? First of all, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it into the content library. So that's generally where I put my content to give out to my students. So I'll pop that in there. So I go to my content library. There we go. Oops, there we go. It's my task 1. And I want to distribute that to my students. I could say to my students, come and take it, come and take a copy, because they can do that from the content library, but I don't want to. I want to do it from, I want to actually send it to them. So I go to class notebook and I choose distribute page. Distribute page. Now that's going to be your most used, but you can distribute individually and you can create groups. So again, if you've got 100 students in here, let's create some groups. And that just works by popping out a little sidebar over here and saying, okay, make a new group. Put some students in that group. All right. Again, I'm hoping that these will join up with things like custom tags or cohorts in your team, but they don't yet. It's separate at the moment. The other thing I can do is cross notebook. I teach 5 astrophysics classes. I want to distribute to all of those 5. I can do it across notebooks. And this is really new. Strangely, it's never been there before. If I make a mistake, I can delete a page that I've sent to my students. Okay, but I'm going to use distribute page. And the tool pops up on the right hand side and it says, okay, where do you want to put this page? Well, I am going to put that into homework. Now, I probably should have customized that and called it something else, but I didn't. So I'm going to put it in homework, or maybe module 2. Let's put it in module 2, distribute. Now it's pretty much instant, but don't expect it to be absolutely instant. All right. So if you're absolutely in a panic to get it out, just expect that it might take 10 minutes. All right, and it copies that page, puts it into the student sections, and away we go. There we go. That says it's done. Now let's go and check. So let's go to who have we got here? We've got Simon. Let's go to Simon's module 2 section, and there we go. It's been distributed, and this is his task. All right, and I might say, right, this is your task. I'm going to collect it in next week and I'm going to have a look at it. Or maybe I'm just distributing an article for them to read and make notes on. So it's a way of getting content to your students. And what I'd say there is great. You've had a week to do your task. I'm now going to want to look at that page I sent to you. So I'm going to review it. There we go. And where did I put it? Oh, it's in module 2. And it is the task 1. Press next. And this basically is the equivalent of a sort of minion type figure, bringing you all of your students' work open on the page and saying, right, here you go, have a look at it. And I can even stop those students from looking at it, or sorry, not looking at it, but editing it while I'm wanting to mark it or look at it. So I can say page lock, select everybody, apply. That means that nobody else now can look at this, apart from me. And I can then say, right, what's Adrian done? Has Adrian done his homework? No, not yet. Claire, no, not yet. So I can go through. And of course, if they had done it, I could then give them feedback. Have a look at Aggie's work. She's not done her work. I give some feedback here. Audio feedback or whatever. I can easily give that feedback. Okay, all of those tools that we've shown already, you have access to this page. You can use them. Okay, when I'm ready, unlock the pages, apply, job done. Okay, really, really powerful tool. But what I could say is, actually, I could say, right, well, actually, Aggie, I think you've done a really good job with this. Would it be all right if I copied your essay to the student to the content library so that everybody else can see it? There we go, copy to content library. Okay, where's it going to go? Well, it's going to go into lecture boards, press next, and it's going to be in this notebook. Don't know why it's done that. Interesting, shouldn't do that. Very interesting. Okay, so that should not have done that, but it's working in some way. Maybe I did something wrong, but that should copy Aggie's work into my, the area where other people can see it, so that I can share it with them. All right, and that is OneNote in a very short hour of OneNote class notebook. So huge potential, I think, for it to work with students and fill a gap. I think at the moment, especially, there's a lot of stuff popping up about OneNote class notebook, and it's been sort of gaining in popularity. There's been a whole load of new features released in the last few days, actually, announced by Microsoft, because it's filling a gap that perhaps isn't there at the moment. The stuff that you would give out on paper, the more creative stuff. Yes, we can work in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, but they're linear, they're quite structured. What if we want a place where we can draw or brainstorm or whatever else? That is here. OneNote does that really, really well, and it's going to be much more tightly integrated with Teams as we go forward. When you create a channel in Teams, it's going to create a section in here. Subtitles will come. Let me just see if I can find you the article, and I'll put it in the chat. Let me find that now, because then you can see what's coming. Here we go. Let me pop that in the chat. There we go. If you want to have a look at those after the meeting, you can have a look. But essentially, we can have live captions. We can use live captions within OneNote. And I was hoping that would work at the moment, actually. That's what I was looking for earlier on, but it doesn't appear that works at the moment. It should be in this menu here. But we should have live captions, so you can use live captions to use it. If you use Adobe Spark, which is a type of free video creator for students, that now works within OneNote. Class Notebook update in Teams. So they automatically create content, and channels create sections in the content library, that kind of thing. and as a better first run experience, whatever that means. Yeah, and you can use it with assignments. So there's a few useful updates, but what encourages me most about this is that Microsoft are spending time and money making this better, because I think it's been left to be a little bit messy with the different versions and things like that, but I'm quite encouraged that they're spending some time and money on it. So I think this is a great tool, and has served me really well as an educator for many years, and I'm hoping that they're going to keep working on it and make it even better, because I think it really fills a gap that's not there with other tools anywhere actually at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. We've got just 5 minutes if we need it for questions, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I will stop the recording at this point so that you can ask questions more easily.